This video is brought to you by Blessed Be God Boutique, maker of Catholic fashionable apparel, handmade accessories, and more. Francis's war on traditional nuns continues. Really, it's his war against sacred tradition that has mostly been waged behind the scenes, targeting traditional monks, nuns, friars, and other religious who had been dedicated to their respective orders' charism and the traditional Latin Mass. That continues. The groups he's targeted through his henchmen in the Roman Curia usually have one thing in common. Virtually all of them have valuable property that they possess, property that would enrich the diocese they reside in and Rome if the group were disbanded and their assets seized by the apostates running the church. There's also a second thing they have in common, that's they are dedicated to their relative traditional ways of doing things. There are too many groups to name that has had this happen to them since 2013, and now we have another such group to add to the list. It's no coincidence that Henry VIII, during the so-called English Reformation, seized the property of the church and gave it to his loyal allies after taking a hefty cut of the profits for himself. Somewhere he's smiling on what Francis is doing to religious orders in our time. Please keep these nuns in your prayers, and pray for the interior conversion of the bishops and cardinals involved in this travesty. Our story comes to us from LifeSite News. Headline: Carmelite Convent in Savannah, Georgia, being forced to close after apostolic visitation. Insider. An insider told LifeSite News that Carmelite Federation President Sister Mary Claire Trolley and Carmelite Father Raphael Wachowski have advised the vigorous and healthy Mother Superior and a 95-year-old sister to, quote, find a nursing home. I sometimes get well-meaning pope-splainers who come into the comments of my videos saying things like, shame on you, he's the Pope, chosen by God when the Holy Ghost landed on some cardinal at the conclave, chose him personally to lead the church. Aside from God not actually hand choosing the Pope, otherwise that would mean that God actually actively wills the bad popes the church admits to having had through history, and God does not actively will error or heresy. But no, aside from that, shame on the pope-splainers, shame on Francis for all of these convents and monasteries they've shut down and sold off for cash. I don't know how many monasteries and convents in the US, Italy, and elsewhere they've shut down and sold off for money, but it's not a small number. The pope-splainers need to explain to me how this is okay. From the article, quote, according to a convent insider who spoke to LifeSite under conditions of anonymity, 3 sisters, including the Mother Superior and 2 novices, were informed in September 2022 that they had until the end of 2022 to move out of the monastery. The oldest sister, who is said to be 95 years old, was among the first group to move to Savannah from Pennsylvania in the late 1950s. She, together with the Mother Superior, who is in her 70s, were both reportedly told to, quote, find a nursing home, to move to without any direction or assistance from either the order or the diocese. Sister Carmela has been here for more than 60 years, D'Arenzio told LifeSite News. The youngest sister, a young woman who had asked her father if she could join the Carmelite monastery when she was 12 years old, has been in the monastery for 5 years. She was provided with no direction nor suggestions for her future by Carmelite Secretary for Nuns, Father Raphael Wachowski, or Carmelite Federation President, Sister Mary Claire Trolley, the insider explained, end quote. I hate reporting these stories. I absolutely hate reporting on them, but the stories of the nuns and religious in these have to be told. So share this video if you can. These nuns need to be prayed for. If anyone knows how to offer support to them, pass that information to me. I will post it on various social media. They need the assistance, but more so, Francis needs prayers because if it's his apostolic visitators doing this work. Here in Savannah, Georgia, previously in Fairfield, and recently in Italy in that 3-part story series told by Vigano about a case just like this out of Italy, where they tried kicking an elderly nun to the curb over an issue of property. This is nothing new. These dogs salivate over the money that will come in from selling these historic pieces of prime real estate. LifeSite article here describes the property this convent sits on as grade A prime real estate. This is about money. Mammon is the master of Rome these days. That is who these apostates serve. And the worst thing about this to me is the forked tongue Francis has during all of this. The LifeStart article quotes a statement made by him recently about the contribution of nuns. If his actions matched these words, I'd actually applaud him, at least on this issue, but he does very different evil work compared to what he says. From the article, quote, during his Wednesday general audience on April 26th, that's last week, Pope Francis asked the following rhetorical question regarding monasteries and their contribution to announcing the gospel of Jesus Christ. Wouldn't it be better if they dedicated their energies to mission? No, the Pope answered himself and called those cloistered religious as the, quote, beating heart of the Church's mission. How different was that spoken proclamation of the positive promotion on the role of prayer and meditation of religious compared to the news from Savannah, Georgia, that the Carmelite convent is to be closed, end quote. I need the Pope splinters to do the mental gymnastics it takes to make this make any sense whatsoever, because this cannot be made to look anything other than deeply corrupt. Apostolic visitations to a religious group, priestly fraternity, or any other group was usually just normal business. It usually just meant that Rome sent someone to visit the organization in question and have some questions they had answered, make sure things are being run on the up and up, and that everything is fine, perhaps with the local ordinary or the head of the religious community in question getting some advice from Rome on how to bring things in line. That's not what happened here. Just like in the case that Vigano mentioned in his recent series I covered during Lent on a group of nuns who have been resisting Rome's attempts to have them driven off their land so their land can be sold and the profits given to Rome, the apostolic visitors came to Savannah, Georgia with one wicked purpose: destruction of a religious community. From the article, quote, the affiliation decree issued to the Savannah Carmelite Monastery in August of 2022, which LifeSite News has obtained, was, quote, to put in place what is necessary to bring about the suppression of this monastery. See Cor Oren Section 3, Affiliation Number 55. Originally, Trolley told the community that all the novices needed to leave the monastery by the end of 2022, the insider said. Continuing, the insider explained that from February 21st to 23rd, 2023, meetings were held with the Federation, the current Bishop of Savannah, and the Apostolic Visitator. At this time, the nuns had not adhered to the Federation's desire to leave the monastery, so they were told again that they had 2 months to find a new place to live. As of April 2023, the mother, sisters, and novices have reportedly requested more time as they pray through this trial, end quote. Don't comply. I beg you, don't comply. They're still trying to get Rome to see the light and stop trying to drive them off their property. The men from Rome came with the explicit preordained purpose of kicking this group of traditional nuns off the property. And yes, they are traditional. They are dedicated to the traditional Carmelite charisms and the traditional Latin Mass and the whole 9 yards. And they were offered no assistance in relocating either, including for that going into retirement. Their crime is that they would be recognized well as Carmelite nuns to our ancestors, unlike the social working activists that dress like laity while calling themselves religious. But you know what? I'm not even against those religious either. Not really. I just want them to embrace their traditional modes too. Being active in the world as religious isn't necessarily a bad thing. Carmelites should be Carmelites, though, and not some parody of a Carmelite. But even those groups aren't doing well either. Many of them are closing their convents and monasteries from a lack of vocations because it turns out most people who are being called to the religious life aren't being called to be activists. Typically, traditional orders are thriving, or if not thriving, they're at least sustainable in terms of vocations. I actually sympathize with Pastor Jimmy Martin of the Jesuit Church on one issue here. He posted a sad news stories about a group of nuns that he personally knows who are ending their religious order entirely due to a lack of vocations. Quoting his Facebook post, "Dear friends, the Sisters of Charity of New York have decided that they will no longer accept new members and have accepted the, quote, path of completion. I find this news sad, but also deeply moving in its humility. Years ago, I told a Catholic sister how sad that I found these endings. She said, 'No, Jim, it's like a life well lived. We were called into this world by God to serve a purpose, and now our time has ended. Please pray in thanksgiving for the generous, gracious, and selfless contributions that the Sisters of Charity of New York have made to this world, faithful in their following of Jesus Christ and the charism of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, St. Vincent de Paul, and St. Louis de Marillac. Sisters are my heroes," end quote. You know, I actually have that much in common with him. Sisters are heroes of mine too. But what is never acknowledged here is that the vocations crisis that drives this, quote, path of completion that's becoming very common with a lot of these orders, in pretty much every case, is a post-Vatican II collapse in vocations. It immediately followed the council. A lot of people just left the orders, and people start trying to enter them. It's unmistakable. The effect of the council and its diabolical spirit was undeniable on the life of religious communities in the church. And this group is another casualty of the spirit of Vatican II. The church needs more religious, not fewer. Pray for all the nuns I've mentioned here today, and pray for the hardened hearts of all those in apostate Rome who see women religious as nothing more than a mere opportunity for personal enrichment or for help making up for the financial losses the Vatican has been running the last few years, really going back to Amoris Laetitia. And it really is Amoris Laetitia. That's a key point here, as you'll find out from me later in the week, because Amoris Laetitia 2 is coming. But it was that document back in 2016 that led people to start withholding their donations to the Vatican. And that was followed by the Ted McCarrick stories like the next year or the year after that sealed the deal. Rome is so desperate for funds now that they'll look to unseemly places for it. Ask Cardinal Zen. Pray for the conversion away from this wicked path that apostate Rome is on. But I need to know, what do you think of these stories? Should all these nuns simply just comply? Should the nuns in Georgia go find a nursing home and let the local bishop in Francis sell their property so some luxury homes or a strip mall can be built on consecrated land? Let me know if that's what you think in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps a lot too. And I also want to take a moment here and thank everybody who voluntarily made a few donations to help my family's storm recovery, the tornado recovery. I didn't really explicitly ask for anything, but a lot of you just stepped up and sent something through the tip jar option I have, and I was really humbled by it. If my internet is restored fully this weekend, then I may have something on that in a mailbag video. I'm honestly just surprised and humbled. Anyway, let's always pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.